massive surprise, EV sales up 25%. There's so much evidence that we are herd animals in so many ways. China is following other countries like Norway. There's a lot of excitement from some people around hybrids, particularly e-revs and plug-in hybrids. And I honestly, personally think it's a little bit dangerous to purchase one of those cars. I think that the hybrid hype is going to die within the next couple of years. And even in China now, the hybrid hype is dying already. I know that might sound crazy, but if you have a look at BYD sales, last month their hybrid sales fell drastically. Their EV sales did not at all. Even though BYD's EVs are definitely a generation behind. I mean, if you don't agree with that, then come on. They are using 400 volt platforms with 150 kilowatt charging. If you're lucky, some of them have 100 kilowatt charging. They're still selling better than BYD's hybrids in China. Gives you really an indication of where the market's heading, seeing the entire Chinese market moving away from hybrids over the past couple of months. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking. And as you can see, I clearly have a narrative here. My narrative is this. I think electric cars are better than hybrids, and they're much less likely to catch fire. It's true that plug-in hybrids have created a lot of bad media, bad publicity for EVs because they had a lot of fires for a few years. There's heaps of them. Very high percentage of them compared to internal combustion, and a very, very high percentage of them catching fire compared to EVs. And all these YouTubers, most of them didn't even know what they were looking at, but many of them did, and they intentionally framed these stories, which were seen by hundreds of millions of people. If you don't believe me, look at the view numbers. The view counts are literally more than 1 billion views for these videos in total, saying that these EVs were catching fire all over the world, in particular in China, but almost none of them were actually electric cars. They were plug-in hybrids. Anyhow, regardless of all that situation, it's true, there's been a lot less fires. I think manufacturers have not sorted that out, but certainly they've become a lot better. However, China's passenger car market is moving away from plug-in hybrids and e-revs even as well, which is surprising. And it's seen a decline in sales. Passenger EV sales in July, or NEV sales, were 987,000, up only 12% year on year, which is a massive surprise. In other words, it would appear that EV sales are stalling in China. That's what the media, I guarantee you, will say, because that's a fall from last month. They're going to say, well, look what's happening. However, the true story is that EV sales in China actually grew by 25% versus last year. The same month last year, EV sales up 25%. However, hybrids, as in PHEVs and e-revs, their sales were down 4%. And that meant that while the market appears to be stuttering, but as you can see, EV sales are certainly not. Of the 980 something thousand vehicles sold that were NEVs, 607,000 of them were EVs. So 60 something percent were fully electric. You can really see what I've been trying to tell people now for a long time. And that is when the market matures, it'll move to more like a Norwegian market. When people get used to the concept of electrification, they start to realize actually they don't actually really need a plug-in hybrid. Anyway, sales numbers. Well, unfortunately, because of the decline in sales of plug-in hybrids and e-revs, it means that less than 1 million NEVs, or new energy vehicles, were sold in China. The Chinese government estimated it would be over 1 million. And unlike usually what happens, the government estimates a number. Usually the market goes above that number. So you can see here, very, very interesting. I mean, have a look at the same months last year. You can see it wasn't really a fall last year, and there is this year. When it comes to EV sales, though, EVs accounted for 61.5% of total new energy vehicle sales. So hybrids, all of them, both plug-in hybrids and e-revs, only accounted for 38.5% of all cars sold in the month of June. Plug-in hybrid vehicles and extended range vehicles combined for a total of 380,000, down 4% year on year, but down 15.6% versus last month. This marks the first ever year-on-year decline in hybrid vehicle retail sales in forever. We don't have data. CNEV Post has been collecting this data, and the CPCA has been reporting on this data since the start of 2020. Actually, September of 2020. So they've been collecting this data now for 5 years. I mean, 5 years. There has never been a time that hybrid sales have gone down month over the course of a year. So if you compare, say, October of 2020 versus October 2021, up. Same thing for the next year, the next year, the next year, the next year for 5 straight years. First time in history we've ever seen the month of the following year be worse than that same month of the previous year. So it's really a tipping point here has been reached, I think, where we're going to see more consumers. Generally what happens when this news is reported by the media, consumers go, oh, and we are, to be fair, we are herd animals. Humans are. We don't like, I know people hate to hear that, but it's true. Often when you go for a surf, you'll see surfers grouped together, even though there's waves elsewhere, or there's waves in front of them. If they go closer to the shore, they'll get more waves. There's all kinds of, it's so much evidence that we are herd animals in so many ways. And I think that, I know some people are not so much, but I think that mentality will affect sales. I think we're going to see EV sales continue to gain market share, continue to increase 25% year over year. Hybrid sales down. That will probably continue happening in China. So this is the beginning of the end for hybrids, is it? I don't think so. I think we're going to see some really good e-revs come out. I've been talking about this for a while. XPeng and Zeekr have hybrids coming to the market with more than 400 kilometers of range. I mean, let's be real. Some of these plug-in hybrids having 100 kilometers of range or less, it's not ideal. It's not ideal. You go on a road trip and you have very slow DC charging speeds. You're talking 50 kilowatt for most of these plug-in hybrids. You're not going to bother to plug in for a 50 kilowatt charging. You might, but most people won't. They'll just fill up their fuel tank. I just think there's some real compromises with a lot of the plug-in hybrids we're seeing. I think some of the newer plug-in hybrids in China, and particularly some of these newer e-revs from XPeng and from Zeekr, are going to be the kind of, people are going to say, oh, well, okay, 800 kilowatt charging, 500 kilowatt charging from an e-rev versus 50 kilowatt from a lot of these plug-in hybrids, plus 400 kilometers of range or more versus 100 kilometers of range. It's a big difference, massive difference. And that's why I keep warning people, be very careful about the tech you buy, because I mean, 50 kilowatt to 400 or 500, 600 kilowatt charging speed, that's a big enough difference that when you go to sell the vehicle, someone might say to you, yeah, man, that's really bad based on today's numbers. And I'm kind of wondering whether that's what's happening in China. I'm kind of wondering whether people going into dealerships and they're saying, well, what's the charging speed? I don't think I want to accept 30 to 50 kilowatt DC fast charging for a hybrid anymore. I think that's not good enough. And there's not a lot of manufacturers yet selling these new advanced plug-in hybrids and new advanced e-revs, which are much better than that. I mean, miles better than that. There's not a lot of them. So maybe that's part of the issue here. Or maybe the market's just saying, you know what? The future isn't hybrid. The future's electric. Why not just buy an EV? What do you guys think? What's your thoughts on this? Let me know what you think in the comments. Bye-bye.